This is part 2 of our video about F-104 Starfighter in the 1965 Indo-Pakistani War. Be sure to watch part 1 if you missed it. You might see this video under a different title, but that's because I'm trying to figure out how to trick YouTube algorithm, because second parts usually get no more than half the views of first parts. The 1965 war wasn't the first conflict between India and Pakistan, but it was the first one in which air forces were used significantly. F-104 was Pakistan's most modern aircraft, and it was used for various purposes such as combat air patrols, escort, or even reconnaissance. On 6th of September 1965, the conflict between the two nations fully escalated. On that day, F-104 was credited with the first aerial victory, although this is not admitted by India, as you could see in part 1. In the evening, Pakistani Air Force launched attacks on Indian bases, and Indian Air Force responded with similar attacks the next morning. Flight Lieutenant Amjad Hussain was on a combat air patrol over Sargodha. He was vectored by ground control to intercept the flight of Indian Mysteres from No. 1 Squadron that were about to attack his home base. The attack initially involved 12 aircraft. The first two sections were armed with rockets and the third one with bombs. One flight leader experienced a non-feeding fuel tank, so he returned to base with his wingman. Squadron Leader Ajjamada Devayya took off as the replacement. One of the sections split, and fearing collision in the dark, also returned to base. Devayya was able to catch up with the rest of the formation as they began their attack just before 6 a.m. The Mysteres achieved surprise and were able to make 2 passes before the defenses opened fire. However, in the poor light, they couldn't spot aircraft in camouflage dispersals, and damage was very limited. As the Mysteres were egressing the area and were about 8 miles from Sargodha, Flight Lieutenant Amjad Hussain detected them. What happened next is not only contested between Pakistan and India, but every source I could find describes this battle in a slightly different manner. Hussain saw 2 Mysteres and then launched a sidewinder at one of them. Some sources claim that both missiles were launched. What everyone agrees upon is that the missile missed and hit the ground. Hussain then approached for a gunshot and managed to damage one of the Mysteres. This Mystere was either flown by Squadron Leader Devayya or by another pilot. The sources don't agree. What is certain is that Squadron Leader Devayya turned into the Starfighter and initiated a dogfight with it. Flight Lieutenant Hussain pulled up and flew a high yo-yo maneuver, climbing to about 15,000 feet. Hussain then repeated his attack, but Devayya evaded it, forcing Hussain into another yo-yo. This time, the Mystere pilot apparently didn't see the Starfighter, and Pakistani pilot opened cannon fire at him. The Mystere exploded, and the F-104 pilot wasn't able to avoid the resulting debris. Starfighter's control froze, and Hussain had no choice but to eject at very low altitude. He survived the ejection. This is the version of the combat given by some Western authors such as Martin Bowman or Peter Davies, and they quote Hussain personally. Indian side sees things differently. For many years, nobody in India knew what happened to Squadron Leader Devayya. He was simply listed as missing in action as he failed to return to base after the attack. In 1979, British author John Fricker released a book called Battle for Pakistan, the Air War of 1965. This work is considered to have been commissioned by Pakistan, and Indian side dismisses big parts of it as propaganda. But there was a description of this combat which gave clues to what had happened to Devayya. Fricker's version doesn't exactly match the one given by Bowman or Davies. According to him, Hussain first attacked the Mystere which didn't fight him. His gunfire achieved hits and this might have been a kill. A second Mystere began to dogfight the Starfighter, and the Pakistani pilot made a mistake of reducing his speed in an attempt to outturn his opponent. During this maneuver, the Mystere pilot achieved hits which froze Starfighter's control and forced Hussain to eject. Fricker then mentions Devayya as one of Indian Mystere pilots killed on this day. Another Indian pilot who participated in the strike on Sargodha, Om Prakash Taneja, deducted that the pilot who fought the Starfighter must have been Devayya. Also, Amjad Hussain was shot down and captured in 1971, and during an interrogation, he mentioned having collided with a Mystere in 1965. Based on that info and some other unspecified sources, Taneja compiled a description of the combat. What follows is the version officially accepted by India. After the strike, Squadron Leader Devayya was lagging behind the two other Mysteres flown by Taneja and Verma. He then spotted a Starfighter attacking him from behind and pulled an evasive maneuver. Some of the 20mm rounds still hit him, destroying his radio among other things. The Pakistani jet climbed away, and Devayya could see that the pilot was looking for the other two Mysteres. Although his airplane was damaged, Devayya still chose to pursue the faster jet in order to save his comrades. A fight developed where the Pakistani pilots pulled a few yo-yos, but eventually decided to reduce his speed in order to get behind Devayya. The two airplanes entered horizontal scissors. Devayya eventually gained an advantage and was able to hit the Starfighter with his guns. The Pakistani pilot ejected, but the Indian one crashed with his airplane near a village called Kot Naka, apparently as the result of the initial gunfire damage. Squadron Leader Devayya was posthumously awarded Mahavir Chakra Award in 1988. Just like in many other cases, we can never be certain what exactly happened. I am pretty sure that the version you will believe will be based on your nationality or preference. During the next week, contacts between Starfighter and Indian aircraft were only sporadic. Two of the most important ones took place at night. Starfighters were the only Pakistani aircraft able to disrupt Indian Canberra night operations. Although relatively slow, those bombers could fly below Pakistani radar coverage and easily penetrate its airspace. Pakistan was using similar aircraft built in the USA under license and designated B-57. On 13 September, Indian Canberras attacked the airfield at Peshawar. Attacking from about 200 feet, they nearly destroyed a flight line of Pakistani B-57s. Squadron Leader Verma then led his force back to Indian airspace. But they were intercepted by an F-104 flown by Squadron Leader Mervyn Middlecote. He closed behind the Canberra flown by Squadron Leader Vivian Goodwin and launched a Sidewinder. There was an explosion, and Middlecote, just like the crews of other Indian Canberras, assumed the missile had hit its target. Indian side claims that the missile exploded prematurely and that Goodwin's Canberra returned to base. Even though the encounter took place over Indian territory and there was no way to verify the crash, Pakistani side still awarded a kill to Middlecote. The only successful interception of an Indian Canberra that India officially admits happened on the night between 20th and 21st September. Squadron Leader Goodwin led the attack on Sargodha airfield. His No. 2 aircraft, crewed by Flight Lieutenant Manmohan Low and Flying Officer Kewal Krishnan Kapoor, was damaged by AAA. Low noticed his fuel was leaking, and he climbed to 13,000 feet to reduce consumption. However, he forgot to turn his orange pattern tail-warning radar back on. Pilots would turn these devices off at low level as they were ineffective in that flight regime, and there was fear that F-104s could detect their transmissions. Low was unaware that an F-104 flown by Wing Commander Jamal Ahmed Khan was behind him. The Pakistani pilot launched an AIM-9B, which hit one of the Canberra's engines. The Indian aircraft plunged towards the earth, and Flight Lieutenant Low first made sure his navigator had bailed out. He then ejected and safely landed. The navigator, Kewal Kapoor, was killed. During the final week of the war, Pakistani starfighters didn't have many encounters with Indian airplanes, but their presence acted as a deterrent to enemy interdiction. They flew 254 combat sorties, of which 246 were combat air patrols. There were no direct contacts with Indian MiG-21s. Apart from the one starfighter lost in the combat with the Indian Mystere, another crashed while trying to land in a sandstorm. These losses were not replaced as the USA imposed weapons embargo on both sides, but that only affected Pakistan. Starfighters were credited with 4 aerial victories, although only 2 of these can be matched with Indian sources. F-86 Sabre was credited with a lot more, but Starfighters' effectiveness can't be measured by victories alone, as their mere presence often prevented enemy attacks. Starfighters were used again in 1971 war. Several videos on this channel were dedicated to their clashes with Indian aircraft, so be sure to watch them if you missed them. Join our Patreon supporters or donate on PayPal to keep the channel in business. Thank you and keep watching Showtime 112.